passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in! Touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
A swing and a drive! To deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jared Foster.
And we are live on Facebook and Twitter. Hello and welcome, Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson, and this podcast is brought to you by Waiting for Next Year. Check them out. Original Cleveland sports reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. Today, we welcome Aaron Schatz, Editor-in-Chief of Football Outsiders, doing exclusive content for ESPN. Aaron, thanks for joining us today because we know Browns fans at this point in time are really focused on analytics, and that's right up your alley.
Yep, that's my thing since 2003 when I launched Football Outsiders, sort of the original mass market football analytics site. So I've been doing this for almost 17 years now.
Let me ask you, how long has really analytics been in play? Like in baseball, there seems to be a bigger explosion in the early 80s. When did really the explosion? Was it 2003 when this came, or was it even earlier in the late 90s?
Well, no. I mean, it depends what you mean by analytics. The way I talk about it is football has always had analytics involved. Right. They've just been at a sort of a more simplified level than we're talking about now. Okay. First of all, because the NFL had a salary cap, you had salary cap analysts, and there were people in front offices who had to, determine what player value was compared to salary cap. But also, quality control is essentially analytics, right? Watching the last 4 or 5 games of your next opponent, figuring out how often they ran certain formations, how often they ran and passed out of certain personnel groups. That's essentially analytics. So the sort of more simplified analytics teams have been doing that in football for longer than they have baseball and basketball. But first of all, it took a long time for sort of an outside movement to grow, right? The outside movement grew in baseball in the 70s and in basketball in sort of in the 90s and the early 2000s. Yep. And I mean, I started in 2003, but, even then, analytics didn't really have a lot of people pay attention to it until, only a couple of years ago, to be perfectly honest. It's been a really sort of slow growth since 2003. And gradually, we started to get more and more attentions from NFL front offices into the kind of stuff that we did. I had coaches and front office people contacting me from the very beginning, but it's only in the last few years where you see teams have dedicated analytics departments. Okay. Like the Baltimore Ravens went out and advertised for people and hired 3 people who were known for their work on Twitter, who had like computer science degrees, brought them in and to do data analytics and created a whole department. For a long time, the analytics person in an organization would tend to be either like someone who worked for the coach doing something similar to quality control. That's what like Mike Frazier does in Kansas City for Andy. Okay. Or like the cap guy. The cap guy was the analytics guy because he was the person who kind of understood how the idea of analytics worked, but he usually didn't have the same interface with the coaching staff that some of the modern analytics departments have. Right.
So let's kind of bring that wider view of where it all came from and kind of tighten it into how today NFL organizations are incorporating decisions on the field, building game plans around and incorporating these analytics into those individual lower level decisions.
Well, building game plans around is in a way just expanding the idea of quality control. The difference is that the data sees everything from every game. You don't have to watch the film on the last 5 games if you've got data that, whether it's from a company like Sports Info Solutions or a company like Pro Football Focus, or it's from the NFL Next Gen Stats that tells you everything that's happened on every play for the entire season so far. You don't necessarily have to go back, or you can make your quality control job easier by specifically looking for, okay, we only want to look at play action passes. Okay, here's a list of play action passes. Let's just look at those on film. Or we only want to look at 11 personnel downfield throws. Okay, well, here's a list of what those are. Now we can we can sort of tailor our film work. So in a way, the game planning thing is like an expansion of what quality control always was. But then there's the larger questions of just, how you run your organization. What are your theories on the kind of talent that you want to get? What's the most important talent on the roster? And then there's the in-game situational decision-making aspect. This is like the fourth down test, the fourth down decision-making type stuff, and whether you go for 2 or kick an extra point. And, I think the teams are definitely listening more and more to analytics on those sorts of things.
Let me ask you this. A comment that I've heard from Mike Florio and from other people is the Browns have become more analytics driven than other teams, and they're really going more in that direction. When you hear that comment, is that the right perception? Or B, is it everybody? I mean, we all know analytics is in the game, and it's, to your point, it's been in the game for a long time. Are the Browns really, though, trying to lead the way in something new here, or is that really overblown? Is that just exaggerated?
They have had a pretty big analytics department for a few years now, right?
Right.
So they've sort of led the way, but they're not the only team that leads the way. I think you have to consider the Baltimore Ravens certainly to be a team leading the way. Not only do they clearly have an analytics department, but clearly the coach is listening to the analytics.
Yeah.
Right. So as far as, I don't know how much of the reporting on the inner workings of the front office and the front office politics of this latest move. I don't know how much of that is accurate. I'm not in the front office, but obviously from the sounds of things, they're moving more in the direction of, okay, let's let the analytics department really play a big role. Let's hire the head coach that can specifically work with the analytics department. And that would be a pretty forward-facing role for an analytics department. Analytics departments are usually much more in the background. But again, I don't know if it's any bigger than what's going on in Baltimore right now.
Okay. Another team that gets mentioned in there too is New England. Is New England one of those teams too that also?
Well, with New England, it's kind of different because they'll always deny that they use analytics, but they've got a couple of guys. I mean, Ernie Adams, everybody thinks is an analytics person. He's sort of a cross between an analytics person and a scout.
Okay.
But there's another guy whose name I don't remember. He's a Tufts guy who's sort of their analytics guy. They use analytics. And you can sort of tell from some of the decisions that they make that some of the decisions that they make seem to be more analytically driven. But certainly they're not as public about it and don't have as public facing and as like, because everything with the Patriots is super secret. So why shouldn't this be?
Aaron, if you had to guess right now, when you look at the way that things have gone for the Cleveland Browns with introducing Paul DePodesta and some of the other well, he's been there since 2016, but introducing this out front use of analytics, would you say that there's still a power struggle that we've seen? Is that part of what's been causing some of the issues with the Browns, is that coaches don't want to use some of these, they want to defer to feeling and football decisions and maybe not pay as close attention to the analytics that, say, Jimmy Haslam wants them to pay attention to? Where are all these issues coming from within the organization?
Or maybe the GM is not paying as much attention.
There you go.
Opposed to the head coach.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure that that's part of it. Absolutely. I mean, listen, there are going to be situations in which the head coach uses instincts.
Right.
Analytics may say it's better to pass, 80% of the time. You should pass more often than you currently pass. But you still have to run sometimes, and it's still the head coach or the offensive coordinator's decision as to when those times are. Like, when do you run? But I think it seems like certainly there's a little bit of a power struggle. And I don't know if it's as much like Paul DePodesta is power hungry as much as it is, let's get everybody who's running things here on the same page.
And that's on Jimmy.
This is the page that, yeah. And I'm not hiding anything here to say that there are some questions about Jimmy Haslam as an owner. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the constant turnover. Even though my people, you can't see I'm making air quotes, my people won this battle, I still feel like, oh my God, like we're changing things again. Like the constant change and churn in the front office is not a good thing. So maybe this time they have them all on the same page.
And I think that the way that at least I see it from, my standpoint on it right now is that Jimmy Haslam seems to be the issue. And the issue with him is he wants to change his opinions about things, his ideas about things, who he's listening to at any given moment, as often as he changes his underwear. And I think it sounds to me like whoever's had his ear the most or been on his good side the most on any given day has been the one to prevail for that 6-month to 12-month period of time.
And certainly with Sashi Brown, there was a sense of, we are going to try to do an intense rebuild here. This project is going to take 3 years. You have to be patient through the 3 years. And we can argue whether you can even do a rebuild of 3 years in the NFL. My friend Mike Tanier argues that because rookie contracts are so short, you've got to do your rebuild in a year, and that's it. Because otherwise, by the time your rebuild is over, you're losing your rookies. From the first draft that you had. Okay, but that argument aside, this is the plan that they presented to Haslam, and he pulled the plug on it, before the second year was over.
Yeah, and that always seems to happen. So let me ask you this: a lot of the Browns fans, and I hate to say it, I'm one of them, because of Sashi and what happened, and we all knew it was a rebuild, but 1-31 really stung in Cleveland. And there was a lot of things that went on, and a lot of people say, like, hey, but Sashi was the reason why this, I wouldn't say turnaround, but this bolt of energy with players came by. So my question to you is, when you studied what Sashi did, I don't know if you had a chance to or didn't or whatever, do you believe his drafts really were, as we say, like data-driven compared to more than other GMs that you've seen and presidents and whatever else?
There are certain picks that lined up with the kind of analytics, some of the analytics that we've done on players. Mm-hmm. But one of the tough things is that all research shows that the draft is, if not a total crapshoot, pretty close to it.
There we go.
There are studies that suggest that no general manager over the long term is any better at drafting than any other general manager. Now, I think there's reasons to question whether those studies are completely right, but what's definitely true is it's a lot closer to that than we want to acknowledge.
Right.
And even if it's not all the way that, even if there are certain guys who over the long term are a little bit better at drafting or a little bit worse at drafting, it's a lot closer to complete crapshoot than we generally want to acknowledge when we celebrate guys for having really good drafts.
Like we did with John Dorsey.
So the fact that the drafts were really bad for Sashi doesn't necessarily mean he had a lot of bad people working for him.
Right.
On the other hand, there were picks that as far as I know, are fairly analytics driven, like Corey Coleman, who didn't work out.
Correct. I think that's the overall thing. So I'm going to do a baseball football thing for a second. Just want to get your opinion on this. Yeah. The thing I was debating on the last podcast, which drew a lot of feedback and comments. I see baseball, because it's a pitcher and hitter game, meaning there's one ball, there's one pitcher, and I see it more a one-on-one matchup where, basically because it's a hitter trying to hit the ball, there's other elements, there's stealing, and there's little other things that go on in the game, but really it's a one-on-one matchup. With football, yes, the quarterback handles the ball and there's a snap, but there's so many more players in movement. There's so many more things. You have to block properly. You have to make sure that people are in proper things. I see a lot more to maybe what you're alluding to. Maybe analytics is more in football than we've ever known and seen because there's so many more elements. Is that fair to say about this whole analytics
it's
thing?
Okay. It's
exponentially more complicated.
Correct. Right.
Or at least looking at individual players is exponentially more complicated.
There we go.
You have to disentangle them from each other. That doesn't affect game management research.
Okay.
On what to do on fourth down. The fact that you've got 11 guys on each side doesn't change the fact that, punting, when you give the ball back to the other team, they're likely to get so many, X number of yards. They're likely to get X number of points on their next possession versus how many points you're likely to get if you go for it. The fact that it's 11 on 11, that it's really complex, doesn't change that. But yeah, when it comes to analyzing individual player value, defense in baseball is a very difficult thing. And over many years, they've developed numerous different companies have different metrics that they use. Metrics don't always agree with each other, and it's very complicated. And everything in the NFL, except for field goal kicking, is equivalent to defense in baseball.
Right. Let me ask you this. What do you see more value in, because there's all this more complexity in football, that we should start paying attention to, not just Browns fans, but everybody, about values in a player or values in a team? What's something that you really look for when you study all the stats and whatever else?
Well, I mean, I look for whether teams do the kinds of things that we tend to think of as analytically sound, like, for example, passing more than they run, going for it in fourth down situations, not only, particularly like certain situations like not running on 2nd and 10, using play action, using motion. Those things, look for your team to do those things. And as far as players go, I mean, the most basic thing to do is just to look at efficiency stats rather than totals. To look at yards per carry and yards per pass attempt, net yards per pass attempt, rather than looking at total yards. And that's especially true, by the way, not for players, but for teams. Like, comparing teams based on total yardage, which is the official NFL way of ranking teams, is terrible. It's terrible. And people actually, like, people who don't like stats in football will say, well, stats in football are dumb because Tampa Bay led the league in passing this year. Well, if you do an efficiency stat that, like, looks at yards per attempt and adjusts for sacks and interceptions, Tampa Bay was not number one passing the ball this year. They were number one passing the ball because they were behind a lot, and so they were passing a lot, and they had an offense that liked to pass the ball downfield. Plus, they were doing it all the time. I mean, total yardages are terrible to use for ranking. The fact that that's still the official NFL ranking system is ludicrous.
Let me ask you, here's my last one, and Jared, if you got any more, you go for it. My last one, the big thing that I have really come across with this analytic stuff is, you kind of made, a lot of people talk about it's more of a human. This is another perception I keep hearing. Well, football, it's more of a people person game than baseball. And I tend to believe that a little bit because, again, I see the pitcher and the batter being a one-on-one thing. And I believe in all analytics, but I do believe in analytics a lot more in baseballs. I think that helps out a lot.
By the way, measure motor, Andy. Does
not measure motor. But that was my question I was going to ask Aaron. Like, have they, and I know the answer is probably no, but you have to ask, like, has there been more of like a ability to be like, hey, certain players play better in colder weather? These this, if you come from the Big 12,
there's sample size problems and stuff like that. Right. You just don't have a lot of games to look at for
correct.
Or certain players are better in the clutch, or how do you define clutch and how do you define better? And here's the thing: what comes up a lot with game management situations like fourth down is, okay, the numbers. Old school football guy will say, numbers said to go for it in this situation, but I knew that my left tackle wasn't feeling well that day, and we had a backup center in, and so I didn't want to go for it because of those things. First of all, there are people who do analytics on game decisions that take those things into account. So it's not like you can't take those things into account. Second is, a lot of times the situations where us in the analytics community are really agitating for teams to be aggressive are not the difficult situations. They're the low-hanging fruit. They're the situations where the analytics are unbelievably strong in favor of aggressiveness, like 4th and 1 on the opposing side of the field. Now, there are also times where the models will actually say, go for it on 4th and 4 on your own 30. And I know you're thinking that's ridiculous, but it only says to go for it by a tiny amount. In that situation, think about, is your left tackle sick? Are you using a backup center? Does their nose tackle just seem like he's just got it today? Like he just woke up on the right side of the bed and you don't want to stuff it down his throat, and you feel like you don't have a lateral run that's going to work, and your straightforward run's not going to work because that guy's playing so well. When it's close like that, by all means, use your instincts. The problem is that the instincts get used as an excuse for why teams are not being aggressive in the really easy decision.
There you go.
Like never ever kicking a 19-yard field goal unless it's, a tie game with a minute left or something.
Right.
Because, the other thing you have to remember about all the fourth down aggression stuff is, in particular, if you're going deep in opposing territory instead of kicking a field goal, you have to remember, if you're anywhere past like the 20, okay, if you fail and the other team gets the ball, you are still more likely to score the next points. Like when their offense starts stuffed in their own end, like if an offense has to start at its 2, it's probably giving you the ball back. So not only is there the huge advantage of actually scoring a touchdown, but there's the fact that should you fail, they're in a bad situation. So you're likely to get the ball back anyway before they score again, which should put you in position again to get down to the red zone.
When you're trying to get buy-in from the football guys, from the coaches, do these guys hold on to, like, what outliers are they looking at and using?
Hold on to outliers.
See, and I knew it. Yeah.
Because our memories, this is one reason why analytics work better than subjective analysis. Our memories tend to only remember extremes.
Yeah, biases.
We don't remember all of those, the average 4th and 1s. We don't think of the average 4th and 1s that were like converted by some other team in the other conference that we never, like, we're the Cleveland Browns, and we never think, what reason do we really have to think about the Chicago Bears and what they did on 4th and 1? But when you look at like the league and how NFL teams do in total, you know, you didn't see that game because you were coaching your own game at the same time. But you know, those plays do help guide us to what is likely and unlikely. The other thing I've found, and this is unfortunate, but NFL coaches, it's very rare to find an NFL coach who thinks in terms of probability. Chess players, poker players, the gamblers, they think in terms of probability. This is a 70% chance, this is a 20% chance, this is a 50% chance, etc. Football coaches tend to think in absolutes. We have a 2-point play that will work. Why'd you go for 2? Because we had a 2-point play that we knew would work. Why didn't you go for 2? Because we didn't have a 2-point play. Like, not these 2-point plays are going to convert 51% of the time, or, you know, league-wide 2-point plays convert 48% of the time, but we think this play is going to convert 60% of the time. They just think either we got a play that works or we don't have a play that works. But that's not how things really are. In reality, everything is probabilistic, right? Just because San Francisco beat Green Bay 37-8 doesn't mean San Francisco is going to beat Green Bay on Sunday, right? We give Green Bay a 25% chance of winning that game. That doesn't mean, and if Green Bay wins, that doesn't mean we were wrong. It means we said 25%, and guess what? Things that happen.
It's evidence suggesting it's not
25% of the time. That's how probability works.
Right.
So I lied, Jared. I got one more now. So
go for it, Andy.
So then, Aaron, I mean, are you telling us that the Browns are going to the Super Bowl? Because I mean, I think we are now.
There's a possibility. How's that?
There's a chance. Right? That's all we ever need.
I mean, listen, you want to talk about the actual team. The biggest thing is to figure out what happened to Baker Mayfield this year.
Let's get into that.
Yeah,
okay, you know what?
That's where I was going to go. Anyway.
I've looked closely and been like, oh, well, this is. I mean, he seemed to decline in basically every area this year. So I don't know what happened. I can't tell you that I have an answer to what happened. But
what I found interesting in your stats, there's 3 stats that really jumped out to me. One was Baker. Baker finished, I think, 21st in QBR, which I worked with John Dahl and others at ESPN when that QBR thing came out. And I use QBR a lot. And he ranked 21st. So that's not I mean, it's not good.
If he ranked better in QBR than he did in our DVOA stats, that probably means the QBR is giving him credit for the throwing longer.
That's right.
Being less dependent on yards after the catch.
Yep.
And also that his receivers may have dropped a lot of passes.
That's right. That's
he's not being charged for those.
That's correct. The other big thing that I noticed, though, from your stats was alarming about the Browns was their offensive line play ranked more in the middle, which I was surprised about. And the defensive line play, which Jared and I talked about a lot, was very low, 26th in the league.
Right, which surprises me given the quality of some of the players like
I know
Jared on that defensive line.
And I look at the way, and this is the way that I've seen it, Aaron, and I think this is for offensive line and defensive line, is that through the first half of the season, it looked like Baker was skittish. For the first half of the season, you had Olivier Vernon in and out, whatever. He was hurt most of it. But once Myles Garrett left, then you're trying to shuffle the deck and make that defensive line work. So I'm wondering if you looked at those numbers and split it from the first 8 and the second 8 games, if you would see a difference there.
I mean, I would have to look, but I remember having this discussion a lot early in the year when the national press was still very concerned with what's wrong with the Browns. Like, once we got to like mid-year, we sort of stopped paying attention. Like, okay, well, the Browns aren't good this year. All right, well, we thought they were going to be good. They're not good. We can move on and pay attention to those things.
Isn't that amazing?
In the first half of the year, when we were paying more attention to what's wrong with the Browns, why are they not the team that so many people thought they were going to be? There was a lot of looking at the offensive line, and I remember Seth Walder from ESPN writing a lot about the pass block win rate that they do. That Cleveland's offensive line came out pretty good. Like, it didn't come out that their offensive line was terrible. But then you would watch the game and there would be these egregiously blown blocks. The eye test just didn't match what the stats said. And it's difficult to know what to do in those cases.
Yeah, I think something that Jared and I talked about.
Fire your head coach.
Well, fire your head coach. Love Freddie, but he was not good. The other thing, too, though, is the Browns actually have very good guard play and a center. Their center and guards are pretty good. Their 2 tackles were terrible. If you watch Browns games, Hubbard and Robinson had a lot of problems.
Right, that's the weakness.
That's a weakness. And so Botonio went to the Pro Bowl again. J.C. Tretter could have gone to the Pro Bowl again. He had a really good year. I think that's where those stats kind of became more in the middle because the Browns actually did a nice job. But if you watch left and right tackle, it was awful. Whew. They had some really, really, really bad eyesore moments.
The pass block win rate, and you'd be like, oh, wow. So their pass block win rate only measures the first 2.5 seconds of a play. And then you'd watch the next Cleveland game and you'd watch Robinson get run over after 2 seconds. Yeah. You're like, why? Why is pass block win rate saying that that's okay? But, again, it's the anecdotal memory. Like, you only remember the extremes. You don't remember all the plays where he held his block for 3 seconds and then Baker just hadn't gotten rid of the ball. And then
which was a problem. Yes.
All right. I got one more. I keep lying. Keep saying I got one more. And
this is what he does on the phone with me.
By the way, I'm a terrible, I'm doing a terrible producer.
Stopping me from asking the last question.
No, this one, my subject in a documentary would walk out of the room. But Aaron seems to be a nice guy. I will sit here for one more. Let me ask you then, is more of the people in your community and more people who do other stuff, are they interested to see what the Browns do in the next 2 to 3 years then? Because they're getting all this press about doing this whole analytic. I mean, I know analytics is done everywhere, but
it's not. I don't think it's unobjective of us to sort of root for our team.
Right.
When a team is publicly identified with analytics, we want that team to do well because we want more teams to adopt analytics. First of all, we all want the team we root for to adopt analytics because we think that a lot of the things that a lot of the ideas in the analytic movement lead to a better football team. And we want the teams we root for to adopt those ideas. But we also want the analytics ideas to win, first of all, because we want to be right, because we're human. And that's just part of being human.
That's right.
Also because we're very lucky in that analytics leads to a better football game.
Yeah.
In baseball has a problem. Analytics lead to a more boring game. They lead to a game that's more based on the 3 true outcomes: walks, strikeouts, and home runs. And not a lot of base-to-base, station-to-station base running and defense. It's a less exciting game. Football is very lucky. An analytics positive game means less punting, fewer field goals, more going for it on 4th down, more play action, more motion, more exciting offenses that do different things, spreading things out, not just running the ball into a pile for 2 yards. Like, the analytics game in football is actually a better game.
It sounds like everything I was screaming for from the Browns last season. So let me go ahead and wrap it up with this then. If you're are you good with that, Andy?
Yes, I'm done. I'm tapping out finally.
Would you say then, at the end of the day, with the decision that the Browns made in hiring Kevin Stefanski and with what they're looking to do with GM, that analytics came into play with how they decided to reach out to Stefanski? And
based on all the reports, right? Assuming everybody who's reporting on this has accurate information, this was part of it. They wanted a head coach that was on board with the analytics department. They wanted a head coach that would meet the analytics department, would take their advice on game planning, would take their advice on in-game decision-making, maybe would have somebody on the headset with the coach to talk about going for 4th downs and when it was right to go for 4th downs. I would expect to see a big leap in aggressiveness on 4th downs next year from the Browns. And listen, that was great for the Ravens. Unfortunately, the problem is those are high-leverage situations, and when you fail, and you will sometimes fail, it looks bad. And that's what happened to the Ravens in the playoff game.
Yes, they did.
They made the right decision, and then the plays hand it to the guys in the middle of the defensive line for the Tennessee Titans. They stopped those plays.
See, hearing this tells me that even though some of these guys that the team has built their core around and who they have with the team right now, it tells me that as much as we're looking for turnover for some of these players, even in the back of our mind wondering, is Baker going to figure it out? Is Odell going to get traded? When's Jarvis going to go? And are we going to hold on to Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the backfield? The way that we're talking about this right now makes me think we should, because the analytics to me suggest that these guys could take advantage of that sort of play.
I mean, listen, I'll tell you this much, which is you've got to have more than just analytics to run a team. I've never been a believer that analytics should be running a team. My feeling is I want the analytics people to have the same place at the table that the scouting people have, but not a bigger place at the table, the same place at the table. And there's certainly things. I can't tell you what's up with Odell Beckham's personality. I can't tell you if he's a quote unquote locker room the things you hear about him. I have no idea how true that is. No analytics are going to tell you how true that is, whether it's a problem or vice versa, whether his relationship with Jarvis Landry is an asset. Right? Like you hear so much about the idea that Odell Beckham is a problem. You never hear the idea that, maybe if everything else on the team were fixed, the fact that him and Landry are best buddies is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So analytics can't take care of that for you. If something's in Baker's head, analytics can tell you why Baker declined, how Baker declined. They can tell you the how, but they can't necessarily tell you the why. Like they can't necessarily tell you how to make it better for next year. The how may be a scouting thing, maybe a coaching, how to coach him up to be better for next year. So analytics have to work with conventional coaching. There's still value. Coaching is more than just analytics. It's game planning. It's motivation. It's how to plan practices, and all those things are still important.
Well, I know my fingers are crossed, but I have low expectations nonetheless.
Listen, I'd love to see the Browns do well. I love to see teams that have been struggling for a long time. I love to see fan bases finally get happy that have been struggling for a long time. It would be great for the league, for the Browns to get good again. Unfortunately, you're stuck in a division with, first of all, the team that the analytics people are in love with.
The Ravens.
Oh, by the way, they have the MVP at quarterback.
That's all right. The real Lamar showed up once again in the playoffs, so I'm fine with that.
Lamar was not that bad in that game.
He wasn't. I agree.
It was not like the Chargers game from last year.
No, it was not.
No, it was not. No, not even close.
No, it was not. In fact, he had 500 yards of total offense and plus. Then he was amazing in that game.
The defense needs to be looking at itself about how he missed so many tackles.
Yep.
I know Henry is hard to tackle, but when you're Earl Thomas and you go into the press and talk about how the Patriots weren't trying, and then you go off and miss tackles on him too, maybe you should be looking at yourself in the mirror. It's tough for the Browns because they are stuck in the division with the Ravens, and you're also going to be stuck with the number one pick in the draft if he's any good.
Joe Burrow, yeah.
And right. You're stuck with the Pittsburgh
Roethlisberger's coming back.
Figure out how to
win. The Steelers are a fairly well-run organization.
Yes.
They're one of the best-run organizations in the league.
Yeah.
They're not what I would call an analytical organization, but certainly they're one of the best-run organizations in the league. We talk about drafting being really random, but there does seem to be something to the idea that the Pittsburgh Steelers are really good at drafting wide receivers.
They are, and it's very annoying as a Browns fan, but they are very,
very rounds, and they turn them into players.
They are good at that.
Well, you know what, Aaron, we'll stay in touch, and we'll see how the Browns begin training camp. Well, we'll start with the draft, obviously, and then we'll see how they look going into training camp, and then we'll probably try to get your thoughts at some point, maybe around draft season.
We'll start with free agency and trade rumors.
We'll do that. Never mind. Thank you.
Since there are trade rumors, then now if you have to see, will OBJ get traded? I would think you don't want to sell low on a player.
Yeah. I was working with a current NFL player a lot this week, and he goes, "You cannot trade OBJ.
It's selling low. You're not going to get anywhere near the right value for him as you would get if things rebounded next year."
Well, then, and now you've got to figure out then how to keep Landry happy because at the moment, I don't know how happy he is.
Yeah, they're friends.
That could affect, just like we had talked about.
Yep. All right, thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you very much, Editor-in-Chief from Football Outsiders, Aaron Schatz. We will talk again at some point. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Here's the things I took out of that conversation with Aaron. Number one, the draft is a crapshoot, which we all know, but to hear from someone who actually studies it, it is actually refreshing to hear. Two, the bigger thing that he brought up a lot that I think, we kind of get misguided, that you can tell is a bigger struggle. It's not in baseball. It is a bigger struggle in football. Is, football is really seen as a game where it's hard, it's tough, and because of that, a lot of people go more on feel. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. There's some things in there that I don't agree with Aaron necessarily that he brought up but the one thing that I did agree with that I thought he brought up really well is looking at, the key values and how you use them and, all those kind of things. And the other thing that he brought up that I thought was a big hitter is, hey, the Browns have to start doing things because, hey, if they have this much going against them, you have to use something to go forward to punch back with. And hopefully analytics going stronger with that will be the way for them to overcome the Ravens and, the Steelers and the Bengals.
Right. Well, what I took away from everything is that still we have the issue with no matter what, whether it's analytics, whether it's coaching on field, whether it's any of these other things, we're still looking at the same issues at the core of it all, and that is Jimmy Haslam at the helm, at the reins, and whether or not all of these guys can get on the same fucking page.
Yeah, that's going to look, we can go down this road if you want. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot happened this week, and with our. You
want to roll with it?
We can if you want. I'm ready to go if you are.
All right, well, let's look at it this way. I was going to go on feel on whether we could keep going because I haven't felt all that great. But I'm going to say this. Let's just go ahead and roll with it. And for you watching on Facebook, we're just going to roll into the second portion of the podcast. And if you're listening to the podcast, I'm probably going to edit some of this stuff out and rearrange the order of everything. So we'll do it that way. Cool deal.
Yeah, here's the big thing that I took out of. So basically, to tee up what we're going to talk about today was just pretty simple. I thought the biggest moment this week was actually Dee Podesta. It was not Stefanski's press conference. I really took a lot of what Dee Podesta said. I thought Dee Podesta really opened up for the first time on stage and gave us a lot of feel and vibe for what's going on behind the curtain, which I thought was really nice to see. Again, Stefanski really quickly, just to get my opening thoughts here, Jared. I thought Stefanski came off as a very likable guy. I heard him on a bunch of interviews. He's a very nice man. He's a very good guy. He's easy to root for. I don't find something Stefanski like that really rubbed me the wrong way. I thought he said everything correctly. It was a very good, strong press conference. That's how I would label it.
That's the same. That's the same way that I looked at it. And I just want to remind everybody who's listened to the last episodes that we have been very hard on the Browns and on the hire. It can come off as we don't want Stefanski. It can come off as we don't like analytics. That is not our issue. That's not our issue. So I feel like we need to foot stomp that repeatedly because I know that that's what some folks will hear. Our complaints lie with the way things have been run, disorganized, all over the place. Can't keep it. You make a decision to run with things for 3 years and then pull the plug after 2. That's the sort of thing that has caused us the pain and given us the grief and the anger that we have to this point. So I guess that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, I just think here's the thing that I didn't get into with Aaron, but and it's funny, Aaron, is I love playing poker. I love playing poker. And then one of the biggest things analytics does not measure, which I understand as analytics movement, is bluffing in poker,
right,
as an example. It's kind of something he brought up. He goes, well, but in the Titans in that spot went for 4th and 1, and the Ravens, then the analytics tells you go for 4th and 1. What analytics doesn't tell you is you're also going up against a guy who is in Vrabel, who uses analytics a lot too, who's against a team that's very tough-minded and very hard-nosed. In that situation, that is a very, very tough.
If you can marry those two things together and get the right blend,
mentioned.
That's the thing.
And he mentioned that a lot. It's blend. It's a blending.
And that's why I said that you have to be somebody who is able to adapt. You have to understand nuance. You can't look at any of this as if it's black and white, whether you're on the analytics side or whether you're on the football side.
Well, right. So let's talk about Dee Podesta, because I agree with Tony Grossi's quote, and I was going to say the same thing, but I won't steal his thunder. The most powerful man in Berea right now is Paul Dee Podesta. Here's the things I took away from his press conference, but I thought his biggest one-liner was that it came in someone at the top. We have to get this right. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, I go, well, there's a man who understands that his job's on the line now, that he has to get this right. This is Paul Dee Podesta's last salvo. He is the most powerful man, but he has to get this right. Here are the big 3 takeaways I take, and probably one of them, if everybody listens to guess this podcast, can guess it. I don't like the fact he doesn't work full-time in Cleveland, and he's not going to. He's going to be traveling back and forth from Cali to Cleveland, and he confirmed that, and he's going to keep doing that. I think that's wrong. I think this job right now needs a full-time man in Cleveland who's running the show. I don't think it works. I won't go into that too much more right now. The two big other things is, to what Jared's saying, a vision, an orchestrating plan. He very much talked about visions and orchestrating plans together. A blend of things, making sure his vision worked. The only thing that I do find weird about DePodesta that he mentioned, and this goes into that, he made this comment, even my kids joke, I don't really understand what I do. And it's like, yeah, that's why we get frustrated sometimes. We don't really know what you're doing and how it's going about. So that, I found that to be another comment where he has this vision and he's orchestrating his plan. He's leading this, and yet he's even joking, I don't even know if my kids know what I do for a living. And I thought that to be odd. The other thing, too, the number 3 comment that really came into play for me is, his explanation of analytics was helpful. He said, it's a narrow uncertainty with frameworks to make informed decisions. He admitted, we don't have all the answers. The people that do the research, we are probably some of the most uncertain people in this building. So he mentioned, and Aaron kind of hit upon it, there's always uncertainty in analytics. It says to go 4 and 4th and 1, but hey, you do go for 4th and 1 and Titans stop you. Analytics, falters there, right? There's always percentages.
Well, yeah, and that's why I brought up the outliers, the outliers, yes. because the extremes are what, as human beings, we grab onto, and yes. that's not analytics, that's instinct, that's bias, that's fight or flight. That's old brain mentality trumping however your cognitive abilities would want to dispute that.
Yeah, and that's why I like the idea of analytics playing a part of being aggressive, and I like that. I actually am a big believer in that in sports. You need to be aggressive at times and really go for it, and that's where analytics and I align. But this is where I have a bigger problem here still with Pete DePodesta. He's still saying, well, analytics are uncertain, but we all know this is his vision of driving it, and we all know he's not going to be in Berea every day. So how in the hell is this really going to get done with him not being in Berea every day? I'm still not sure. And the other thing that I still don't quite know is he's the chief strategy officer, so he's presenting the strategy. Yet he still doesn't have an understanding of giving a clear answer of what other than he has this vision. And I understand he can't state the vision because that might be giving away some tips to other teams. So I get that. That's fine. But I do find it odd still, though, that there's still this aura of mystery about him. My kids don't know exactly what I do. Well, there's still this. I like Paul, but he comes off weird. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because how do you implement something when you're not in the building?
I agree. I don't understand that.
How do you get buy-in from the guys that are coming in that are on the field? How do you get buy-in that this is the way to go when he's the man behind the curtain?
I agree.
That's not. It's not like you're. Is he just whispering in Jimmy's ear and then relying on Jimmy to correctly play telephone and implement that down from his spot to the GM to the coach? Like it's not the analytics. It's the structure. It's the way Jimmy is allowing it to go down, and the way it almost. And I'm not. I know this is obnoxious. It feels like Jimmy is getting slightly bamboozled by a guy who's across the country. In the sense that if this is the way to do it, then get your ass here and help implement it.
Here's the other thing too. Again, this is something I don't agree with Aaron. And you kind of mentioned it. I know where he's going for, and I like. Aaron was a great interview. The one other thing though, that analytics, and I don't know if Aaron would feel this way, but I shouldn't say that. But you got to have a feel, and you really got to be on the ground building something because there's so many more elements in football. And he kind of made a reference to that. And for Paul DePodesta not to be in Berea building this whole thing, and he's the visionary, but yet he can't explain what he's really doing to his kids. And again, he understands too that there's a lot of unexplained, and there's a lot of there's uncertain people sometimes in the building because analytics is not an exact practice, meaning there is a cause of failure rate. Those kind of things, what I would advise Paul is I would be in Berea every day. I would really be on the ground showing hands-on, because if you show that, and because here's the big thing, it will relax this comfortability. There's an uncomfortability in Berea.
Yes.
And there still is, even after this press conference. And I thought Paul came off well. I thought Stefanski came off really well. Jimmy was Jimmy. But even through all that stuff, I still think there's this weirdness and there's this uncomfortability.
Because this is simple psychology, Andy. It's the way you deal with your kids.
Yeah.
Think of it that way. If you hide things from your kids, what happens to your kids? What does that build within them? Anxiety, mistrust, possibly, because they can't see the process. They don't understand fully. But what happens when you hold their hand or you walk them through or you show them or you explain to them? There's an understanding. Oh, I get it. Now I can do it too. Now, so I just don't understand how, if with all these smart guys, all these Ivy Leaguers in the room, how they can't understand the importance of human interaction. And, in getting this stuff implemented and being there and not just dictating from across the country.
And that's my point. He said it well. Aaron said it perfectly. God, Aaron was a great interview. You got to blend all this stuff. And the Browns still aren't blending properly. I think part of this new blend is Paul needs to be there every day. He's not going to be. Here's the other thing that I've learned that I'm ready to start sharing. Is I heard this again a lot this week. I was working a lot with this NFL guy. I work with a couple other people. There is not only this perception, there are people that have come in and out of Berea who are players, who have told people it is not fun playing for the Browns. And that is a big perception and is a reality because people go into Cleveland, no matter it's in the Shermer era, whether it's in the Hugh Jackson era, whether it's in this current era, who don't enjoy their time in Cleveland. And that's not good. And I hate hearing that. It makes my heart sink every time I hear that. And I heard that so much this fucking week. And this guy told me, he goes, Andy, I'll be honest with you. I hesitate to go somewhere like this. Is an 8-year veteran. Guy's played in the league for 8 years. He goes, I heard from others. I heard from other people, from agents too. And they go, when my players go in there or when a player goes in there, they're not happy. And they leave there being angry and upset. That's bad. And that, by the way, that is why this whole Paul DePodesta thing, that line, we've got to get this right. He's fucking right. And thank God he said that. It's
toxic
like, dude, you're
leadership.
Yes. This whole thing about analytics is great to some people. This whole thing about this whole new Stefanski thing and feeling good's fine. But if you still have this problem, whether it's Shermer, Jackson, now the latest being Freddie, players come in and they're not happy and they're not enjoying it and they're leaving out of Cleveland, and that's perception league. It doesn't fucking matter if you lose analytics to the highest degree because no one's going to want to come here and play. And that's the biggest fucking problem. And I don't like hearing that shit.
Because it's a toxic environment, because they don't know what they're doing, because everyone's running around with like a chicken with their head cut off, because there's a lot of probably micromanagement, a lot of puckered buttholes over how long, whether anyone, how long a regime's going to last. There's the way that people, have you ever, I've worked in environments, Andy, that have been great, and I've worked in environments that sucked. And the way that people behave in each of those is night and day. Yeah. Night and day. You can't trust people when you work in a bad environment like that, because everyone's there just trying to keep their noses clean, trying to keep their asses out of trouble, and they're not even focused on the mission.
So the biggest thing I would tell the Browns, if DePodesta is going to be in Cali, which he is, you need to have someone on the ground who can actually mold, and as I'll use the word that Aaron says, blend feelings and make this feel like a comforting thing. That's why Jimmy and Dee are expressing all the stuff. We all know it. But again, I've heard this comment from not just this one player, but from several other people and players I've talked to in the past 3 or 4 years. And to be honest, it even goes beyond that. That Cleveland has not become a place where players enjoy their time there. And you don't need analytic ratings to tell you that. It's just a flat truth. And it sucks. And I want this to turn around and change. And from what I'm hearing and from what I'm seeing, I know they're going for this philosophy, and it could really work big. Again, I will not go off that. It could really work big. But if people aren't enjoying themselves, and people aren't having a good time, and people don't like playing, it doesn't fucking matter what's going on.
No.
And I think that's the biggest problem with this. I still get this vibe of weirdness, this uncomfortability. And again, I thought, okay, with Paul DePodesta, I thought Stefanski came off well. I like Stefanski a lot. Again, another guy, hard not to root for. You really want him to do well and all that other stuff. Paul D seems like a good guy, but there's always this weirdness, and it's just strange, and it is a weird vibe. And again, I came across this week, if I'm being honest, like I felt like I knew a better idea of who he was, which was nice. I think Paul DePodesta needs to do more of these. I think Paul needs to put himself out there more. I thought that was refreshing. I thought that was great he did that because I finally got a taste for who he was, and he seems to be like a nice guy. But again, there's this weirdness and this whole thing too about, hey, I can't explain to my kids what I do. I take that little comment. I know he's joking, but it's like, when you hear that though, it makes you pause. It's like, but if you're the chief strategist, don't you know how to explain to your kid, like, hey, I have this vision. I'm building basically an infrastructure here of a football team. You can't explain that to your kids. That's really, Jared,
you should have a version of it simplified that you can explain to your kids that you can use anytime you're talking to anybody.
I'm building a football organization on and off the field, period. Why can't that be said? I just found it to be very,
Andy, it's
very, very odd. I thought that was anyways, all that to be said, for anybody who hasn't listened to it, I think you need to listen to the Paul D. Podesta press conference. The other big thing here's a couple other quotes that came out from Paul D. That I thought catch my eyeballs on his philosophy of makes a good coach. Or sure, I would say this. There goes for a lot of the people we talk to, even in our research around the game, to get advice on what makes a great head coach, whether it's coaches, players, whatever. I think most of them would actually downplay the importance of scheme, X's and O's. It's really about leadership. I think more than anything else now it has a lot of different components. So he was really downplaying schemes, really downplaying the actual thing of like strategic things. And again, more in placing analytics. Paul D. Podesta has a lot of input of what's going on now. Stefanski's the coach, but it's almost like what you see now I'll compare it to what you see in baseball, where the GM does a lot of what's going on in the field. The D. Podesta has a lot of control of what's going on in the field on Sunday. Here's another big one. I am a big he talked about, this is the question was basically how much pressure is on the group to get this hire right. Quote, I am a big believer there's a real cost of change. Forget about the financial cost. There is a cost to turnover. They talked about it in there, the different coordinators that the people had to go through, the different people in this building. We have to get this right. We embarked on this. What was this? Close to 2 weeks ago now. He knows the pressure here to get this right is huge. And that is good to see. And he's right. This is everything. This is everything. I mean, this is his hire. This is his show.
So
Stefanski doing well is meaning Paul D. Podesta is doing well, and vice versa. This is an alignment now. There's no doubt. There is no question after this press conference. None.
Well, let's see. I mean, it's
gonna play
hard
out.
to have an opinion other than let's see, unless you're looking at finding the root of the problem, and we know what the root of the problem is, and Andy, it almost makes any other conversation not matter. You know what I mean? When the foundation's broken, and I've had this, God bless, I've had it in my 12-year military career. I worked in a lot of organizations, in a handful of organizations, one in particular that loved to talk about fixing things but ignored the root of the problem. So there was never going to be a fix because they wouldn't look at, acknowledge, admit that the foundation was fucking busted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what is going on in Berea.
Yeah.
I don't think that any of this is going to change because I believe the foundation is busted. I think that Jimmy Haslam doesn't know what he's doing. I believe that he will find a way to mess this up. I do not trust who is waiting behind him to take over the team, which if I had my guess, it'd be JW. I'm not trusting that guy either. I don't think any of this is going to get better because I don't think we're addressing the problem. I don't think this is a problem with coaches. I don't think it's a problem with GMs. I don't think it's a problem with players and personnel. I think it's a problem with the guy who makes all the decisions at the top. You can't fix anything if that is fucked up.
And to your point, it's getting hard to argue that because it really does. Again, when you hear players talk about Cleveland, like, I don't want to go there because I heard it's a really hard place to play and it's not enjoyable.
Right.
And when you hear that, it just breaks your heart. And it makes you wonder. It's like, well, they're going to do all this analytics stuff. And here's my bigger point here, Jared. If this does not work with analytics.
Because analytics isn't the problem.
By the way, right.
Use it or don't. Doesn't matter.
By the way, get to your bigger point. I think it's starting to run out of bullets here. What else other than the Haslams?
There are organizations that incorporate it more than others. There are organizations that incorporate it less than others. The ones that do it less have succeeded. The ones that do it more have succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because of culture.
Well, again, we'll have to wait and see. I'll get to some positive stuff.
I know. I can't stand it. I really got to be honest here.
Right.
I feel, Andy, like I don't like being this tough and this mean in regard to Jimmy Haslam. You know, when I think about it, I'm like, this is a real human being. This is an individual. This is a guy who I think really does care. But this is a guy who's just lost in his ways and can't get out of his own way.
Well, I'll say this.
And that just really...
Here's the one thing. Can Paul DePodesta lead us out of this from La Jolla, California? We're going to find out.
Okay.
We're going to find out. And I think that I hate to say it, I lean with Jared here. I don't think it's going to work out. Well, we'll see. We'll see. By the way, let's go down this road. Baker Mayfield was also the big point of conversation, and that was really put on to with Stefanski. Here's Stefanski's quote. I spoke to Baker briefly yesterday. He is down in Austin, Texas. Caught up with him for just a minute. He is the quarterback. He is the trigger man, and that is the exciting part. I worked with a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of great ones over the years, and I'm looking forward to hunkering down with him and to getting to work. He had an interview in K&R, and he already mentioned he's seeing things that he wants to improve that really will help Baker out. The bigger thing here, too, that I think should come across with Stefanski and specifically and again, my biggest thing, fixing six. How is this? This is going to be my big thing throughout the whole offseason. Fixing six is huge. And I think the big thing here that you really took out of, I'm trying to find that quote. Oh, here we go. Personality is welcome. Your production is required.
Right.
Stefanski is
there's already
really,
fucking T-shirts.
Yeah, and by the way, it should. I like that.
You know how Cleveland is.
Well, I'll even go further.
The coach says something, and then it's on a T-shirt.
Well, it is, but it plays to something that I do like. I did like that quote a lot from Stefanski. I like Stefanski a lot early on. I like what he's saying because he preaches something that Purdue talks about a lot in basketball. Work harder, hard work, boiler up, get it right. Personality is welcome. Your production is required. Get to work. I think that's great to hear someone say that. Not just say, do your job. Yeah, get to work. We're going to put hard work into this. And I'll tell you what, he preaches that in everything he says. And I love that about him. He is really talking about and really pumping out his chest about getting to work early. And by the way, another plus of Stefanski that I'm noticing early on, the females seem to think he is very easy on the eye. and I've seen, and I got to be honest with you, I see the Cleveland bandwagon growing because of this excitement, which I think is nice. I think it's nice to see.
Well, there were very flattering photos taken of him that made him look like a men's suit catalog walking into Berea the first time. So I can understand that. He's got his little beard going on, grows in a little bit better than mine.
Well,
I will say this though, I think that the Kevin Love comparisons got a little corny. I will say that. It was a little corny.
As a single guy, I'm definitely taking the Stefanski model. I'm going to do Rogaine. I'm going to really tighten up my beard, and I'm really going to take like a bunch of X-Lax.
A nice suit makes a man.
It really does. That and sit-ups clearly, and eating good food, which has not been a part of my regimen lately. But anyways, I did think the overall positive for these three guys, Jimmy was Jimmy. I don't think anything changes. It was really nice and refreshing here, DePodesta. I thought it was really, really nice to hear from him. I didn't like everything he said at times, but it's nice to hear from him. And I thought he was very honest, which I appreciated. So that Paul did a nice job. And I thought Stefanski won the week. I really did. It's hard. Again, and by the way, Freddie won the week last year, so it means fucking nothing. But Stefanski won the week. He came off well, presentable, sounded nice. He gave good, concise answers. You can tell he's an Ivy League guy. comes off as very smart. It's hard not to
Looked
like
a little
him.
nervous. We will say that. Looked a little nervous.
He came off as very nervous, and I think the other thing is too. I'm not gonna say he's a negative, but it's something I observed. He's very raw. Stefanski is very raw. It's funny. Freddie was very raw, but we took to him more because of whatever else that came about. So I hope the rawness kind of blends in, and we'll see his football acumen kind of come through. But Stefanski does come off as very raw. You can tell by some of his answers. You can tell by it comes off.
That is going to be the difficult part regarding the locker room and whether guys are going
he's raw. He's raw.
Get on board.
He is raw. And I'm not saying it's a negative yet, but he's raw. There's no question about that. That came off, and he was nervous. And again, I don't think those are negatives, but those are just observations that I did. I'm glad you reminded me about the nervousness. I thought he was very nervous. I thought Jimmy was also very nervous. He got cotton mouth a few times towards the end of his press conference.
Trust me, I wasn't even watching Jimmy. I didn't watch any.
I watched every second of it. Listen, typed it out. People can go back.
I'm so bitter.
So that's the whole week itself. Before we get to OBJ,
right.
So the GM search is still going on. Andrew Berry was interviewed today. The new player in town is Monte Ossenfort. He is the player. He's the director of college scouting for the Patriots. For people who are wondering, where's this George Patton? Or I think it's pronounced Payton. George Payton, the assistant GM for the Vikings. He's been rumored, but he has not been scheduled for an interview yet. So as of right now, the Browns have only technically interviewed Berry and this guy Ossenfort. I have not seen any reports about anything else. The Browns GM search has gone very, very, very strange. Reminds me a lot of what I saw last year from the coaching search, where it's like we kind of interviewed Berry, we're kind of interviewing this Ossenfort guy. Peyton, maybe. And then I think they're just going to make a decision. I don't think the GM search is make or break because of that. It doesn't mean that, but the GM search has been very, I don't know, murky. It's hard to.
Well, I wonder if
read.
that has something to do with the fact that we have seen Paul DePodesta take point on a lot of this stuff, and guys might not be interested.
Well, I think also, I just got to be honest with you. Yes, to your point, here's a bigger thing. It's Andrew Berry's job.
And you know what? If we would have recognized the way things were going, we could have said it was Stefanski's job from the beginning too. So again,
that's right.
Why are we even bothering?
Here's the one thing I would word of caution, which I don't think is going to happen. I think Andrew Berry will come here, everybody hunky dory, and it'll be fine. God forbid though, if Andrew Berry is your guy and he gets signed on to the Panthers or something like that. Just saying. But
I will say one other fun thing is that I saw when Georgia Bulldogs announced that Monken was heading their way.
Yes.
They talked all about Monken's career up until 2018.
What happened there? Oh, right.
They didn't have anything on there from
2019? No, big blank.
No.
What happened there? Well, it was a struggle.
Yep.
All right. Now, talk about to what was not a struggle. Was watching OBJ handing out dollar bills on the sidelines. But to the bigger thing, this arrest warrant was issued for Odell Beckham after the locker room butt slap. For people who haven't seen it, there's a video online. Odell Beckham Jr. Clearly hitting the butt of a police officer.
I believe it was security guard, actually.
Security. I'm sorry. I'll be fair. Security. He said, the statement I read, a police spokesman said the warrant was issued after a video showed a male officer. He's actually listed here as an officer.
Oh, maybe then. Okay.
Yeah, after the LSU championship game.
Well, then I see, because I've got opinions on some of that, depending on whether it was a cop or not. That could change a little bit. But
it says here male officer.
Okay.
It says here male officer.
Well, here's this then, Andy, and I'm going to start with this. And yes, I'm distracting. Yes, I am going to address something else that I think is the bigger picture item, and that is, looking at the video, you can see that the cop is trying to basically bother one of those players and find out what's in his bottle and in the locker room. And my question is this: what are you doing? Get the hell out of the locker room. Leave those kids alone. They just won a national championship. If he's got some fucking vodka in his fucking Gatorade, give me a fucking break. Stop.
Well, that's
get out
different.
of there. But
that's different.
But my point is, leave them alone. Leave the kids alone and get out of there. Now, I will say this. Maybe that's why Odell was trying to distract them. maybe that's why Odell decided to do that. Was it the right move? No. At the end of the day, what's going to happen? He'll pay a ticket. He'll pay a fine.
Oh, yeah, he's not nothing more than that.
So this is all a bunch of pomp and circumstance and a big show to try to make a point. And I'm telling you right now, I'm more concerned with why the cops are in there harassing players after the national championship game. Yeah. That's my problem.
I will actually go to this then. Okay, one side note. The LSU thing with Odell Beckham Jr. handing out dollar bills on the sideline. There's two fractions of this. One, he's trying to bring up an issue about players getting paid clearly.
He did it on purpose.
Yeah, he did it on purpose, whatever else. The thing that's very difficult and very hard to decipher is LSU got very embarrassed by that. LSU felt very, felt very weird about it. You can tell LSU did not like that moment for obvious reasons because it can get them in big trouble with the NCAA. I think that's for a debate that could go in many different directions. It is a huge debate. I think players should get paid. There's millions of dollars being made here and they need to distribute properly. You're going to have to figure out how you pay someone equally on a male volleyball team or a women's volleyball team to compare to men's basketball, women's basketball, and men's football. That's going to be tough. All that to be said, though, once you figure that stuff out, which anybody can figure it out, it's just going to take a lot of work. I think.
Andy, this is. I mean, if we want to just break this down real quick, you don't spread the love. The bottom line is you allow these kids to make money on their likeness. They are individuals, and the NCAA should not own those individuals. That's it. You don't implement some sort of fairness across the board because then that's not the way that should go down. The problem is that the individuals don't own their own likeness. Point blank. That to me is the very clear answer.
Yeah, and that's changing, and it's changing slowly. But there's all that to be said. I don't want to get too much more than that. That's why I see that situation, right? And it's very, very complicated. But we all agree about the interactions that we all agree. There's a lot of things there that happen. The bigger thing to me is OBJ and the Browns. I'm going to talk about that. You can't slap a male officer in the ass. Can't do that. That was not the right decision to make there.
Correct. Incorrect decision.
I've been one of the biggest and staunchest OBJ supporters of keeping him around. I have been very big about it. I must say, though, the money on the sideline thing, I don't care. This thing, though, is a small rest. It's whatever else. I will say, Jared, though, I'm starting to wear thin on these situations that keep coming up.
There's been a lot of them.
I'm starting to wear thin. I'm starting to get to the point where it's like, I know he's talented. You got to keep him. I would not trade him yet. I think you need to keep him on this team. But I'll say these things are starting to add up. And it's starting to get to a point where it's like, how many more times, are we going to have situations where a Browns have to put out a PR statement? Like all these different things keep coming around. And it's like, at a certain point, Jared, you do get elevator full, even when they're little things like this. Like this is to me, this is a little thing. But I'll be honest with you, these little things are starting to add up.
Yeah, but to me, this is the difference in the way that a league like the NBA treats its players and a league like the NFL treats its players. The NFL wants to nickel and dime and be assholes to Odell regarding visors, regarding just the watches.
No, I agree with you.
These in other leagues wouldn't be an issue.
No, I'm with you there.
And he is of the cloth, cut from the cloth of, I'm going to use my position, use my platform to basically highlight the ridiculousness that I see. So I don't know that I can hold that stuff against him. I do understand, though, how it could, over time, after happening, it could begin to wear on people. I just don't see... I see the NFL being a problem. I don't see it as Odell being a problem.
Again, that's a bigger thing here. I don't disagree. I'm not disagreeing with everything Odell has happened to him. I think there's some things where he's been really, really picked on. But they add up. All these things keep adding up. He did not instruct... He did not do. He was the one who put his hand and slapped the guy in the butt. He did that.
Right. No,
he did that on camera.
That one's one that I can't defend. I can't defend
it. And the thing is, Jared,
I can't defend a decision to do that. But what I can say is, I want to know why the cops were in there.
No, I know. Again, there's always a bigger thing with this, and I'm with you. Here's a way I compare it. There's always these buzz things going on in LeBron, and there are more buzz things to what you were saying and talking about that didn't bother me. With OBJ, for the first time, he's starting to cross more of a line. Where it's like, I'm starting to wonder, it's like, is it taking the toll on the team? With LeBron, everybody believed and loved LeBron so much that I knew it was for the better of everybody, and I was right, and he won the championship 16. Because of what I saw the product on the field, and because of what I know as a guy who studies sports, what I know, Beckham doesn't have that same clout, but he's creating just as much buzz. And I think him doing this time and time again, forgetting me, I think it might wear on the team. I think antics like this do wear on people.
Yeah.
I think they really do. No, whether it's right or wrong, whatever the cause is,
this is where we'll see. This is where we'll see what happens with Stefanski and with some of those guys that do take on leadership type roles within the locker room. I think we're everyone's. What was the latest quote? I don't even remember who said it, but why can't we have a team full of Nick Chubbs?
But that's not how the world's made up. Like
correct. That's my point.
If someone says that, it's like, well, that's not. You can't say that either. Look, here's the thing.
No, I think you kind of out yourself on the type of on the type of yes sir type of person.
Yeah, and by the way, you can only have so many of those in a room too. I've worked with that. You can only have so many of that in a room. You need diversity. You need a bunch of players and people thinking differently. It helps create the best product. Here's the thing, though. I would keep OBJ. I'm still good with them. He's fine. Yeah. But these things can't. I would say, Jared, these things need to start slowing down and stop happening. I'm starting to feel a little.
Well, luckily, there's no other LSU games.
He's starting to feel more. Okay, how about this? It's starting to feel more and more reminds me of what Trevor Bauer. I must say that's the comparison I'll go with. Okay, it's not there yet, but we're starting to head down that road.
Yeah, I can.
We're starting to head down that road. We're starting to head down that road. And I don't want to, and I want to stop and rear. So see how Stefanski handles this. Here's one other thought. I do think this ramps up internally the pressures of getting him out of Cleveland. I do think the Browns will try to move him. I don't know if they will, but I think they might try to really sniff it out.
Yeah. Well, I like what Aaron said though too. Is trying to move him on the down
I agree.
Downtrend isn't really good.
I agree. It's not smart.
So that would tell you if they did move him, before the season, that would tell you that the Browns were tired of that stuff. If they move him, if they wait and they move him at a later date, then you can argue that maybe it's some analytics driven decision or something else. They move him now, it's because they view this as being too much. I don't think it's too much. I think that you are possibly on the verge of having an Odell come back and respond to what was not the best season.
Yeah, again, I would not. And I do think I don't think it's a guarantee the Browns will, but I think the Browns are going to sniff that out more and more because of all this. Okay. All right. Are we good? We did an hour and 12 plus Aaron on the Browns. So I'll diverge and transfer quickly. I want to end on baseball. So let's go through a couple other things. Yep. Again, he's going to be a Bengal, but it was really great to see how LSU won. I was rooting for LSU. I was wrong about Clemson. They did not get blown out, but the game was really out of hand towards the end. Yep. It was really a blah national championship game. It was intense and great first half. Second half
started really well.
Yeah, lost its zip. Lawrence did not play well in the second half. It wasn't his fault, though. I thought LSU's defense really tightened up. I thought Lawrence did about best as he could with what he had.
Well, I'm glad I went to bed at halftime then.
Yeah. My only thing about and I love ESPN. They're wonderful. I worked there 18 years. Don't work there anymore. These games though going till 12:30 at night have got to stop. This game kicking off at 8:10.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't. I mean,
we got these. This championship game is exhausting. It's exhausting. They've got to do something to fix that. It was exhausting. That game was very exhausting. It was a long football game. It did not have zip.
I agree with you 100%. You could just look at. I looked at folks walking into work the next day feeling like shit, and I thought to myself, "Well, I'm glad I went to bed."
Yeah, it did not have zip. It just blew.
I don't understand that with any sport. To be honest, with you.
Well, but that sport in particular, I just
don't like it.
That game was a good game. It felt good, but the game dragged on. Anyway, so that's one thing. The Cavs did what I thought they sadly would do. They lost 2 straight in LA. They got blown out by the Clippers and Lakers back-to-back nights. Darius Garland keeps playing well. I think he is becoming the budding star on that team. I know he is actually. Again, everything he thought was going to happen in LA happened. LeBron was very motivated to beat the Cavs, and that, when he's motivated, that motivates others. Howard went off. Howard went off on the Cavs. He was running and laughing, and in fact, he got a technical foul for taunting in that game. Really, the Laker game was just never competitive, and for anybody seeing Kawhi Leonard play, the Cavs don't have anybody to match up with Kawhi Leonard. Most teams don't, and Cavs in particular don't. That's that. They play the Grizzlies tonight, and I don't know why he's slipping his name right now, but that rookie from the rookie for Memphis is really playing well right now. He is really, really, really playing well right now. And they beat him the first time. I'd be interested to see the Cavs beat him in Memphis tonight.
Well, I think we got to throw a shout out to a happy birthday to Dan Gilbert. Again,
yeah.
Brought it up in the past that we don't know exactly where he stands health-wise at this point. But nonetheless, happy birthday and wishing the best to Cavs owner Dan Gilbert, too.
Yes. So all that to be said, yeah, well said. So, again, the Cavs play Memphis and Chicago, then they finally come back home. Okay. That's all about that. Purdue has not played this week, so everybody's a winner, and Ohio State beat Nebraska at home. All right, so now let's get to MLB. Because the MLB's had a big week for all the wrong reasons.
Ain't kidding, and I don't know if it's over.
No, it's probably not. Okay, so let's take this for example. I mean, this is so much as Captain Obvious. The Astros look horrible, as they should. The Astros come off feeling very, very disliked. They are definitely labeled as cheaters. They are definitely labeled as people that don't play the right way. Yep. It spread so much that Alex Cora had to be released from Boston, which I thought was a proper move. Carlos Beltran to me is very different. I think it's very debatable, but the Mets let him go. So, well, that's how far this extends. And now, all that to be said, so Hinch is, everybody knows the story. Hinch is gone, GM's gone, Cora's gone from Red Sox. That's how far this blends out. And then you get this whole thing up around yesterday afternoon where Altuve and his buzzer, people haven't seen it, watch the video. He hits a jack of a home run against Chapman. We talked about on this podcast. He jacked it out. And it looks to be like he had a buzzer to tell him what pitch was coming. So
like
that way he knew how to hit
coming.
And he knew how to hit it that hard. I think it's true. I think the video was very damning. I think everything that goes around is damning.
It's unfair to call it a conspiracy theory at this point.
It's not a conspiracy theory.
No.
It happened.
And when he comes around third, he's grabbing his jersey, telling people, "Do not rip my jersey off."
It happened.
And then whose niece was it?
Brocious.
Yes.
Brocious is another thing about Trout. I'm gonna get to Trout in a second. The niece for they called a niece for Beltran.
Yeah, Beltran's niece.
Sorry.
Supposedly on Twitter, called that out and said, "Look, all this is going on," and you connect that dot with the video. It's not hard to figure out. And then the other things that bother me are the fact that it's been known. It seems like leadership within Major League Baseball is aware or has been aware of a lot of these things. I know that the people in Cleveland sports media, Andre Knott, had discussed a while ago, I guess in one of his podcasts, regarding the fact that the Houston Astros do things a little differently, and alluding to this stuff. I don't understand why Major League Baseball is okay with this. I don't understand it, because I think, from what I saw, another player tweet out that Trevor had retweeted, which was, "I'd rather face a guy who's taken steroids than face a guy who knows my pitches."
Yep. I'll tell you, I'll go a step further. This scandal's not going to go away.
No.
I am
Nor should it.
I love the Jose Altuve story. My view has changed. I do consider him a cheater. I think what he did was wrong. I don't like it at all. I think this is
well, to what we talked about earlier today, Andy, and you said it best. It changed the trajectory of what teams did.
Everything. It changed the Indians. That was such a defeating loss. You can go back and listen to our podcast. It was so deflating. And then to hear Kipnis come out saying, well, they have an edge over us analytics-wise. What he was saying, quote-unquote, tongue-in-cheek, is, we know these guys are fucking cheating. Clevenger talked about in the video he tweeted online today. It's a very good video. It's about a minute and a half long. The Bauer comments. It really hurt the Indians. This loss hurt because we all took a step back saying maybe Corey Kluber doesn't have it. He got banged around again. Maybe he got banged around in Houston because Houston knew what the pitches were coming. Maybe that's the fucking reason why he got banged around.
How angry does that fucking make you? Because I'm livid.
This whole organization, by the way, it cost the Yankees a chance to go to the ALCS. How about this? Let's go a step further. How damning is in the 18 ALCS, it's the Red Sox and the Astros, the Cora's team. And Cora's team wipes them out in 4 games. And even I said to myself, this doesn't make sense. You know why? He was fucking cheating better than the Astros were cheating. And the Astros were cheating was starting to become more of a thing that was being elevated. It's all smoke and mirrors. And by the way, the Dodgers, who sounds like they played straight lace and did the whole thing properly the whole time, they don't have any championships because of this. The whole thing feels bad. And by the way, I have no explanation or no means of how you're going to clean this up. The Astros, to me, are so unlikable right now. I don't want to hear from that owner anymore. I know they said they're sorry. Fuck them. I don't want to hear about it.
No, you're right. That's the best way to put it. Fuck them.
I don't want to hear it.
No, baseball's already struggling as it is, and I love that game. Andy,
I love baseball.
That game was my life for 13 years. That game, I spend my entire teenage life was spent at Jacobs Field. I don't like that game being fucked with. I don't like it at all.
It's being fucked with.
I don't like it being fucked with, and that's what's going on. And this is what I don't like is it doesn't seem like it's going to be handled correctly at the end of the day.
Yeah,
unless the pressure stays on from everyone else. And that's the issue that I think is, I think it's a bigger issue with our culture in general, is a lack of institutional responsibility. So, institutional being, accountability.
I just think, to what all you're saying is just so correct. And again, I'll say it again. I don't know how you clean this up unless you just fire everybody and get rid of players. Altuve's buzzer was so deflating to me that I went back. I love his story and I love this guy. So I'm like, I don't want to hear a fucking thing Altuve has to say again.
Nope.
Oh, no, I don't want to hear it. You got caught cheating on camera. The whole thing's silly. Don't argue it. Our video doesn't lie. And again, it changed this organization, the Indians. It probably changed the Yankees. And by the way, people don't want to admit this up here. It really affects the Red Sox because they come off now as cheaters. Cora is one of the biggest ringleaders. And Cora, in those comments, for people who haven't seen, Cora made a comment after the London games going, the best acquisition that the Yankees made all year is getting Carlos Beltran in their dugout. That fucking shit pissed me off so much when I heard that comment. I'm done with it. I love baseball. I'll be there on opening day. I'm not naive. But this thing's bad. This is a bad look.
I wish Brantley would get the hell out of Houston.
Can't. Gotta get that do-re me. It's going to be tough. The Astros are going to be a tough sell as likable. Tough sell. And again, Clevenger had a good video. Bauer's comments have been good. There's a lot of people out there talking about a lot of different things about this issue, and I think it's all worthwhile to read. And I think there's more to come. I don't think this is done.
Yeah.
I think there's more to come here, and it's sad for the game of baseball. Well, look, we almost talked for 90 minutes, so I think we've hammered everything home here today.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Aaron was great. I think it was really cool how you brought that stuff up. I would take the Chiefs. I would take... I'm one of the rare guys. I really think the Packers are going to win for some reason. So Packers and Chiefs replay Super Bowl I on the 100th anniversary of the NFL. Would be kind of neat to see to do. Again, Stefanski, I love Stefanski. Very nice man. Rooting hard for him. D. Podesta, I'm not thrilled by what's going on there. Again, I'll be rooting for the Browns here on out. I'll be interested to see how it works out. I thought we learned a lot today about analytics. And yeah, the Astros are a bunch of assholes. You can just add another S to the Astros in the middle. Astros. I think you got it right there. And then OBJ, love him. Still want to keep him here. But again, I think it's going to start wearing thin. This keeps happening. I don't know how much more you can keep going down that road.
Definitely rooting for the Packers to go all the way and win it all. And that is because my stepfather, who passed away in July, was a huge Packers fan. So that's where I'm at through this Super Bowl. Hopefully the Pack can get there.
Yes.
Hey, shoot us an email, andyandjared@gmail.com. Check out our website where you can listen to all the episodes of the podcast. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, the websites are Andy and Jarid, andyandjared.com and clevelandandbeyond.net. Also, follow us on Twitter at CLE and Beyond. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond. What else here? Am I missing anything? Thanks again to Football Outsiders Editor-in-Chief Aaron Schatz. Thanks for joining us today and giving us all that insight. Much appreciated.
FootballOutsiders.com. Check it out. It's a very, very cool website. FootballOutsiders.com. After the Super Bowl, we'll do our annual 3-part review series of the Browns. That should be fun. Ending high, ending low. Starting high, ending low. We will also are looking to do something fun for the NFL draft. Stay tuned to that. And that should be fun.
Yep.
And I'm about ready to eat my foot, so I think I'm done with thoughts.
Yeah, it's time for dinner. Cool deal. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson. Andy and Jared, Cleveland and Beyond. Don't be a fucking cheater.